Hello, Packers fans, and welcome into Packers News Live. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Pete Dougherty. Here in the weeds of the offseason now, Pete. This is where things get gritty, and you're watching the news every day to kind of see the new contracts. What is this part of the offseason like for you?
Well, it's this is a little bit of a deader time, but it's going to pick up fast, and it's interesting. It's not as hectic as the season, but games are won and lost in the off season with
That's a
the
good
moves
point.
teams make. This is important stuff.
That's a very good point. That's a good way of looking at it. That this is what determines your season right now. As you said, sort of dead right now, but it will pick up here very soon. Free agency starts on March 16th, so we're still a little less than a month away from that. The franchise tag is due March 8th, I believe. Um,
Yes.
so we're still, a couple weeks out from that, but this is where the draft starts to pick up. The NFL Combine is next week. Pro days will start coming in after that. And right now is like you said, where teams are going to have to start making decisions. As we know, there were 4 contracts up for not renewal, but today was essentially a soft deadline for the Packers, is the best way to describe it. For 4 contracts, Davante Campbell, Robert Tonyan, Kevin King, and Shannon Sullivan, where, and I'm going to let you explain this because you could probably explain it a little bit more, but essentially there were void provisions where they had a voidable year coming up in 2022. And if the Packers signed them to a new contract by today, and the times have varied, we know that we've heard different times, midnight, 3 p.m., different times, but if signed by today, the Packers could save some money that could go back into their cap pool. Um, when you're when you're so up against the cap like the Packers are, I think they're over 50 million over right now. At this point is all money. And, if you save 2 million by signing Robert Tonyan ahead of time, is it worth it? I think you saved 808,000 by signing Davante Campbell by today. I mean, is it worth it to get any of those little pinch pennies back? Or do you want to kind of wait and see how free agency unfolds?
It possibly is worth it, but it's also hard to do. I mean, Devondre Campbell's not going to sign a deal right now unless it's a deal he really likes because he's a free agent. He can sign with anybody come March 8th, and he's not playing any games between now and March 8th, so there's no injury risk. The Packers would have to make him a really good offer. So, would the offer have to be so good that they wouldn't benefit from the money that they'd save from the acceleration? Those voidable years, the deadline today is that if they don't do a deal, then those years void and all that money accelerates to this year's cap from the bonuses they did last year. So it's a tough argument. Tonyan, I mean, he's not going to sign with anybody right now. He's coming off an ACL. He's going to wait and see how that rehab goes, and teams are going to wait and see how that goes too. Sullivan, I have trouble seeing the Packers bringing him back. Just at the cost that he'll be for even at the minimum salary. I would guess they'll want to go younger there. It is a soft deadline, and I think the chances of any of those deals getting done probably aren't real good. Now watch, a half hour from now they announce that Davante Campbell has just signed an extension. But, Campbell's a tough contract to do with all their cap issues. And so it'll just depend on how much cap room they have. They don't know yet because the big domino hasn't fallen yet, and we all know what the big domino is.
Yeah. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We will get to them here in the next couple of minutes. Lots already coming in about some of these guys. As you said, though, the big domino hasn't fallen yet. That is, of course, what Aaron Rodgers will decide to do with his future. There's a lot of scuttlebutt on Twitter that Aaron Rodgers will announce his decision tomorrow on the Pat McAfee show. I feel like it's important for us to point out that Pat McAfee never said Aaron Rodgers would be on his show tomorrow. He's been on vacation. He's coming back. Tomorrow is his first show back. And he teased a big guest. I mean, it could be Carson Wentz for all we know, Pete. But of course, since it's Tuesday, there's assumptions that it will be Rodgers. There are assumptions he will announce his decision. And if he does, I would have to assume he's not announcing it saying this is what I want to do. It would have already been discussed and worked out with the Packers. Wouldn't you think so?
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, look, I could be wrong here, maybe this stuff has already all been worked out, but I can't see him coming on and saying I'm coming back, because for him to come back, they've got to do a new contract. He can't come back at the contract he's got. He's not going to say I'm coming back, and then what if the Packers don't offer him a contract he likes?
Right.
And is he going to come back and say, is he going to go on that show and say, I want to be traded? I mean, I guess it's possible, but I don't know. The feeling I got from just, talking to people who kind of have a feel for what's going on, I got the sense that it's probably going to be early March when a decision is made on this stuff. And Rodgers was going to take some time to think about it. And if he does want to come back, like we said, I mean, they got to do a new contract, and we're talking $45 to $50 million a year. This is not just some minimum salary, deal we're talking about. I find it really hard to believe. I find it hard to believe that tomorrow Aaron Rodgers is going to go on McAfee's show and tell us what's going to happen. Now, I could be dead wrong. And like you said, we don't even know that it's Rodgers, for one thing.
Right.
So I'm not seeing it, but, I guess we'll have to, wait it out and find out for sure.
Maybe he has his next book club book. A lot of questions about what Rodgers' decision means for Jordan Love, or if the Jordan Love decision is independent of the Rodgers decision. Josh Simon, for example, said, I'm hearing rumors Packers are not confident in Jordan Love. That has been a rumor that has gone around and made the circuit the past few days. But another rumor that probably deserves our attention a little bit more, question from Alexander, are the rumors true about teams looking into trading for Jordan Love? Pete, based on what you're hearing, do you think there's legs to that? And if there is, can they really get anything for him right now when all teams have really seen is a half versus the Lions and a not great game against the Chiefs?
I mean, are there legitimate reports of that? I can't say I saw any legitimate reports on a team being interested in Love, and I can't imagine the Packers getting anything for him. Like a fourth maybe or something for what he's done so far. Even if Rodgers returns, I would guess that they'd want Love to be their backup this year and to have him play a lot and have a good preseason, so that if Rodgers returns for, let's say, 3 more years, then next offseason they could trade Love and actually get something for him instead of this offseason, when I can't imagine they'd get anything worth making a deal worth doing for him.
Yeah. And to answer your question, there haven't been reports that would make me sit up and say, okay, this is happening. But there's been enough where it's like, okay, if there's smoke, there's fire somewhere. Enough to catch my attention, but not enough to make me stop.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just people speculating, hey, maybe the Packers are looking to trade Jordan Love, just bringing up the possibility. And we all do those at times. But it's, that's a lot different than it actually being a rumor. It's just somebody floating a possibility that they've concocted in their own minds. I mean, I did that a couple of weeks ago when going through teams that Rodgers teams that might go after Rodgers. I had never seen Tennessee listed in it, in all the stuff that I'd seen. And I thought about it, and I thought, God, my Tennessee, I'm going after this guy, because you add him to that with Henry, and you've got an excellent team. But I had no reason to think that Tennessee was actually going to do it. I was just speculating. So if someone wrote a report like that, then it's worth absolutely nothing.
I'm about to tweet that. Packers news breaks. Tennessee Titans looking at Aaron Rodgers.
So if someone's trying to put 2 and 2 together, fine, but there's a difference between that and there actually being credible rumors that, hey, this credible reporter was talking to people in the league and they heard, either teams want Love or the Packers are trading Love. That would be different. That would get your attention. But if it's just people speculating, hey, if the Packers bring Rodgers back, they're going to want to trade Love. Well, yeah, eventually they would if he's going to come back for a few years. But my guess is if all that happened, it would be next year at this time, not this year.
That's a very good point, and something to remember this time of year, that not everything that gets floated out there is really happening. Mike asked, we kind of addressed this. Do you feel that pretty much anything and everything the Packers do hinges on what they do with Rodgers? Yeah, that's the first decision that really has to be made. Mike says that, in his opinion, Tonyan is worth every dime. The biggest question is, how will the defense look? We'll get into the defense here in the next couple of questions, but let's jump back to Tonyan because we glazed over it. It was fine, but we glazed over it. As we said, they could save about $2 million by signing him today, but he does have that ACL injury he's coming back for. Is his production before the injury enough to take the risk, or is that just one of those injuries where you're never certain of how the guy will come out? It's worth losing the money to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, David Bakhtiari was a great lesson in how things can go awry with these recoveries too, and it's a serious injury. Tonyan was a really good player, and losing him hurt them. His stats weren't that good before he got hurt, but he had an outstanding training camp, I thought, and it was just a matter of time before he started racking up decent numbers. But you just don't know how he's going to be coming back from the ACL. The Packers probably have a decent feel for how his recovery is going because they've been rehabbing him, but it's still fairly early in the process. I mean, when did he get hurt? Was that early November maybe or late October?
Arizona, so week 8.
Yeah, so it's only been what 3 or 4 months, not even halfway to the recovery. So, pretty risky. Now, maybe they'd be willing to sign him to a minimum contract, but if I'm Tonyan, I probably don't want to sign right now. I mean, why? Why not just wait and see how the rehab goes, and maybe you start getting offers, in April or May or whenever, June.
Yeah. Let's jump into the defense a little bit here. Levi says, we saw what the Smith Bros, Gary and Clark sorry, I'm reading that wrong. We saw what the Smith Bros, Gary and Clark could do. Does Goody bring the Smith Bros back? Looks to be a nasty rush, like with that group. Can they afford that entire group, that 4-man rush, and bring them back? Or do you have to pick and choose? And again, this is speculation based off just their social media, but Zadarius Smith said goodbye a few weeks ago for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I can't. It's almost impossible for me to see how they could keep both Smiths. And Preston would be the cheaper one, so it makes a lot more sense that Zadarius would get cut. And Gary has improved so much that, he's arguably on track to be as good a rusher next year as Zadarius was his first 2 seasons here. But it would mean that's a position they're going to need to draft at too, in my opinion. Well, they got plenty of needs. But I just find it really, really hard to believe both Smiths could be back. So I've been proceeding under the assumption one of the two, much more likely Preston, will be back, but just one of them.
Yeah, it's a fair point. To that point as well with the defense, Lindell asked why was Campbell in Green Bay yesterday. If you missed it, and we were talking about this at the top as well, so you can go back and watch for more in depth. Campbell has a soft deadline in his contract where ideally the Packers, if they are going to re-sign him, would do so by today. It is assumed that if he was in Green Bay, it is because that deal is happening. Of course, there has been no word yet for sure. He's staying at the hotel not far from me. I can walk to it. And I asked our editor, I was like, do you want me to just go start knocking on doors, see if I can catch him? He's like, sure, go for it. So I did not do that.
Yeah, the hotel might frown upon that.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, you never know. You do what you got to do. Mike, there's been a lot of questions on this, but Mike asked it in the most succinct way, so we're going to bring his question up. Do you think they tag and keep Adams, or trade, or just let walk?
So this is just my best guess. No inside info. I think the least likely of those is just let him walk. I just can't imagine that they'd let him go and all they'd get is a 3rd-round pick a year from now as compensation, for losing him in free agency. So I'm going on the assumption they're going to tag him, and they're either going to tag him and keep him if Rodgers returns, and tag him and very possibly trade him if Rodgers does not return. That's my best guess, just guessing.
And Rodgers has indicated that his decision will sort of be shaped by what they do with Davante Adams. And so
I kind of feel like it's actually the other way around,
Really?
Yeah, what they do with Adams is, depends on what Rodgers ends up doing. But assuming Rodgers doesn't make his decision until, sometime in March, let's just go with that guess right now, early March, let's say, the Packers very well might have already tagged Adams by then. So at least Rodgers would know. And this would be something that Rodgers and the Packers would talk about, and they would tell him, hey, you come back, we'll do everything we need to make sure, Adams is back.
Mm-hmm. We're going to grab a couple more questions here before we sign off today. Don't want to keep everyone too long on your, if you do get the holiday off today. Happy President's Day, Pete, by the way.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. It's the day we celebrate all our greatest presidents.
And buy mattresses, right?
And buy mattresses. Celebrate Bill Pullman and Independence Day and go buy a mattress. Tripp says that Rodgers' appearance tomorrow is going to be for his new book club book, The Art of the Deal. I can see that. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Aaron Rodgers Book Club. Levi asked, and this is a good question, and I wanted to highlight it because, as we said, the NFL Combine is next week. This is when the draft prep really kicks into high gear. How much does year 2 help Amari Rodgers? Can he get open early, or is he another wide receiver that gets no separation? And why I reference it in terms to the draft is because that's a position that could be drafted and change things quickly and drastically. Is Albert wanting to come play?
Albert is chewing on something that he's not supposed to chew on.
Pete has a new puppy, and it's making his life
a dream. It's incredible. Yeah, I haven't had a puppy this young since the 90s, and I forgot what it's like. How much work
They're
it is.
worse than a 2-year-old.
But that is a really good question, and it's something I'm wondering. And I gotta say, look, the guy's just only had a rookie year, so to give up on him would be foolish. But I can't say I saw a particularly dynamic player. I don't think he was dynamic as the Packers, as advertised, or the Packers thought. At least he didn't look like it last season. I never saw any play where it was like, but that guy looks really, really quick, really fast, really strong. I never saw any of those things. So I'm wondering the same thing, Levi. And I guess another year will help him. Maybe there was just something that wasn't clicking with him in the scheme and knowing what to do. But, last year was a really, they drafted that guy and I thought, well, this guy's going to play a lot as a rookie. They need a slot receiver. They need a guy who can do, all the jet sweep stuff. He seemed tailor-made for that, and he could hardly get on the field. So that's a red flag for sure. And I have the same question. And right now, you got to lean towards being skeptical, but it's still a little early to just give up on the guy.
Yeah. Pete, for our final minute here, we're going to go with quick hitters. I'm going to throw a question at you, 5 seconds or less answer, just off the top of your head. It's like seeing those pictures that are just blobs. Okay.
It's the speed round or whatever they call it in
speed round, exactly. Yeah. What do you see for Mason Crosby's future in Green Bay?
Cut. Salary cap casualty.
Packers getting another quarterback in the draft?
Maybe late round, yeah.
Can you trade Zadarius Smith and get something out of it?
No, teams will know that they're getting rid of him and they won't want to trade anything for him. They'll figure they'll just try to sign him instead after the Packers cut him.
Rodgers loves Cobb. Does that bring Cobb back? Yes or no?
Oh, that's a tougher one. I'm thinking Rodgers has to realize that Cobb's time is up, but so I'm thinking no, but don't take that to the bank.
Is Ben Kirk signed for next year? Yeah, he signed a future deal, right? Yeah. So yes, he is. Good job on your lightning round, Pete. You passed.
Lightning round, that's the one I was looking for. Not
lightning round. Yeah.
Yes.
I kind of like that. We may do that again next time.
Yeah, that was fun.
Quick hitter questions at the end. Guys, we will not leave you hanging. We will be back ideally again before the combine. Our colleague Tom Silverstein and I will be in Indianapolis next week. So we'll hop on here before we head that way to kind of preview that as well. Pete had a column today. You had a compliment in here as well on your column. Someone really, really loved it. Here it is. Atomic Hound. Great column today as usual, Pete.
Good to know somebody's reading.
I read everything you write, Pete. In theory. Go check out Pete's column. Our colleague Ryan Wood as well is going through all of the units, giving them grades, and that's been a really cool series to follow along with as well. And like I said, we will see you again before the end of the week, before we head to Indianapolis. In the meantime, stay tuned to PackersNews.com for full coverage of a free agent season that is about to pick up speed. Thanks, guys.